From Drop Biscuit Studios and the people who brought you Wondery's Inside Jaws, Inside The Exorcist, and Inside Psycho comes You Talking to Me? Bite-sized Hollywood history with plenty of bite. Pretty Woman was once an ugly story. This is You Talking to Me? I'm Mark Ramsey. So, Cinderella is a princess and Prince Charming, well, he's a prince, right? Right, unless he's a businessman in a power suit and she's well, how can I say this nicely? A hooker. And believe it or not, both stories come from our family-friendly pals at Disney. The latter was released in 1990 and became one of the biggest hits of that year. It also made an overnight star of the legendary Julia Roberts. Of course, I'm talking about everyone's favorite rags to riches via prostitution story, Pretty Woman. But did you know that Pretty Woman was originally a much darker and lower budget tale? I know you can't believe a movie about a streetwalker would be dark and low budget, but it was, trust me. As initially conceived, the Pretty Woman character was a drug addict. Part of her deal with her businessman Beau was that she would stay off cocaine for a week because she needed money to go to Disneyland, which is not the main street you think of when prostitution comes to mind. Here's how Julia Roberts described the original script. It was a really dark and depressing, horrible, terrible story about two horrible people, and my character was this drug addict, a bad-tempered, foul-mouthed, ill-humored, poorly educated hooker who had this week-long experience with a foul-mouthed, ill-tempered, bad-humored, very wealthy, handsome but horrible man. And it was just a grisly, ugly story about these two people. Holy cow, save a ticket for me. Any movie described 3 different ways with the term horrible must be worth a bidding war concluding in a rights fee of $17 million, right? But was Disney barking up the wrong hard-scrabble street lamp? As the Magic 8-Ball says, my sources say no. Disney attached a very reluctant Gary Marshall to the project. What, Gary? Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley didn't prepare you for this? Naturally, Disney wanted a lighter tone, to say the least, and 6 drafts and numerous writers later, that's what they had. Before you know it, Richard Gere's character is breaking into a bathroom to find the Pretty Woman flossing her teeth instead of doing the drugs she had been doing in the original script. And speaking of the cast, that was no party either. Marshall wanted Karen Allen or Mary Steenburgen or Meg Ryan. All of them said, prostitute? Thanks, but no. Daryl Hannah, Michelle Pfeiffer, and even Molly Ringwald turned down the role. And at least Molly Ringwald later admitted she made a mistake. If only they had told me I'd be flossing instead of doing cocaine. And then in walks a stunning 21-year-old Julia Roberts. She was fresh from Steel Magnolias and the role that put her on the map in Mystic Pizza. I am and always shall be Team Kit Kat, by the way. And Richard Gere, he was no pushover either. Christopher Reeve and John Travolta were in front of him for the role, and so was Al Pacino, who even did a casting reading with Roberts before turning down the gig. What I'd give to see that. It finally took a trip from Roberts and Marshall to Gere's New York City apartment to persuade him to say yes, and so into production it went. Most of us have heard the story of the scene where Gere playfully snaps the lid of a jewelry case on Robert's fingers, resulting in one of the most authentic and joyful laughs ever on screen. Gere improvised that scene, but the necklace, that thing was real. It was worth a cool $250,000, and it came with an armed security guard on the set. One of the toughest tasks, it turns out, was finding a luxury sports car for Richard Gere. Surprisingly, both Ferrari and Porsche didn't want their cars to be featured soliciting prostitutes. I can't imagine why. Lotus Cars viewed this as more of an opportunity, quote unquote, and boy did it pay off. Sales of their Lotus Esprit tripled during 1990 and 1991. Make of that what you will. Julia Roberts had a tough time with the love scenes with Richard Gere. She'd get so nervous a vein would pop out on her forehead, and apparently that's not sexy. She developed a case of the hives, also not sexy. On went the calamine lotion, again not sexy. And not good for Gere's rep, the star who gave his lover hives, right? Despite all of that, Pretty Woman opened atop the box office and remained #1 for 4 weeks and in the top 10 for 12 more. It was the 4th highest grossing film of the year in the US. It remains one of the most successful rom-coms in Hollywood history. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now, and please give us a 5-star rating. That's You Talking to Me? I'm Mark Ramsey.